I want to build a nightstand with a hidden feature that will help me go to sleep faster. You see, I have a bit of a problem, which is that when I'm reading before bed and I'm dozing off, the lamp is always a bit too far of a reach, which means I have to get up, turn it off, and at that point, I'm not as sleepy. Oh shit. Bad idea, bad idea.
You're indeed brave tonight, but the fight is mine. Oh, and enough, eh? Victory is mine. Just a flesh wound.
So I just spent quite a lot of time sketching, but I'm glad that I did because now I have a pretty good idea of what I want this nightstand to look like. This is my old nightstand, and I want to make 3 big improvements that are going to take this project to the next level. Number 1, I want the drawer face and legs to be curved so that they match the rest of the furniture I've built. Number 2, I want the drawer to be very discreet so that when it's closed, you won't even know it's there. And I want it to close quietly, unlike this one. Last but certainly not least is the main feature that will help me go to sleep, but more about that later. It was time to get rolling, and if I wanted to get this project finished in the month-long winter break that I had off of school, there would be no time for dilly-dallying. I started by ripping down some pieces of plywood for the curved drawer front. To achieve a smooth curve, I'll be using a technique called kerf bending, which involves making multiple cuts, leaving only half of the last layer of plywood. I used an online calculator called BlockLayer to calculate the spacing of the cuts, and I was able to type in the radius that I wanted. Even though I've used this technique on previous projects, it's a bit of a learning curve, and I never seem to get it right on the first try. I don't think this is gonna work. I did one more cut and it's still not 90 degrees, and this radius is definitely bigger than I intended. After one failed attempt, I got back to work, but the second try went just about as well as the first. How can I be so stupid? I had both of the templates laying around, and I must have just used the wrong one. 3rd time's the charm. I finally got the spacing correct, so I was able to glue it up. As per usual, I'll be doing most of this project in the driveway, as my shop space is a bit cramped for these larger furniture projects. So while that's drying, I need to think about what the top of this nightstand is gonna look like. It's gonna be the piece that sees the most wear and tear, so it makes sense to make it out of solid wood. Now, I didn't really feel like spending another $100 on raw maple, so I'm gonna use one of my cutting board blanks. I have a slight problem, which is that this is 1.5 inches thick, and I only want it to be 3/4. I ripped the maple cutting board down into 3/4 inch strips on the table saw and started gluing them up. You might be wondering why I'm not using a solid piece of maple so it won't have any seams. And while one big piece of wood would look more beautiful, it's more likely to warp when the temperature and humidity changes. So by gluing a ton of small strips together and alternating the grain orientation, you'll have a more stable piece that's less likely to crack and warp. I had to make the top of this nightstand in 2 halves so that I could fit it through my planer, and then I glued those 2 halves together afterwards. While that piece was drying, I shifted my attention back towards the curved drawer front. I unclamped it and it looked fantastic. Very solid and very symmetrical. Now, in order to clean up the drawer face, I would need to perform 2 slightly sketchy cuts. The first was to chop off the ends with the track saw, which went smoothly. That wasn't nearly as sketchy as this next cut, which I don't recommend trying at home. I needed to trim a little bit off the top and bottom edges, and the awkward shape of this piece left me no other option than to use the table saw.
Oh my God, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the?
Luckily, I was able to make the cuts unscathed, but if you've ever used a table saw, you'll know the risk of having the wood bind in between the blade and the fence and get launched back at you at scary speeds. Now, I didn't want any part of this nightstand to have exposed plywood edges, so I decided to glue on some thin strips of maple that will serve as edge banding. Once the glue had dried, I trimmed them flush using my router. I think this is a hybrid style of woodworking. Much like charging your hybrid car with electricity, building furniture out of plywood saves you money. A traditional purist might scoff at both electric cars and plywood furniture, but if they're a reasonable person, they can still appreciate the plywood furniture from a distance because it'll still look pretty professional. You might not be able to tell that it's a hybrid car unless you inspect it, and you won't be able to tell that this nightstand is made out of plywood unless you look closely as well. The plywood and edge banding isn't nearly as nice as if I'd made everything out of solid hardwood, but it's nicer than raw plywood or laminate furniture that you see from IKEA, which is basically just cardboard covered with fake plastic.
Time to start putting things together.
I laid out all of my newly cut pieces of wood to form the drawer box and traced the inside edge of the drawer face. When I'm out in the driveway, the neighbor's kid likes to watch me work on projects, and he's always asking me what I'm up to.
Hey neighbor.
Hi.
How's it going?
These interactions remind me that being exposed to tools and watching people be creative at a young age is what set me on my path. And I think that curiosity needs to be encouraged and not stifled.
I plugged all 4 holes with the dowel, plus one mistake that I made. But now I can put the sides on, and it's really important that I get this aligned correctly. Otherwise, this entire box is gonna be out of square. I think it worked pretty well last time using the CA glue. It just held it in place a little bit so I could take the clamps off sooner. Okay. That's misaligned. Move. Okay, that's not bad, that's not bad. I think that worked out pretty well. Okay, so at this point I have the drawer front and I have the box that's gonna encase the drawer. The drawer box. So that means we need to actually make the drawer itself.
For the frame of the drawer, I decided to go with some solid maple because I didn't want to deal with hiding the plywood edges. I cut this half-lap joint, which will provide more surface area to glue the frame together.
Time to see if all of this fits together nicely. Yeah, that's pretty good. Side piece. Oh yeah, final piece. Yes, dude. So before I can start putting together this drawer, we need to deal with the inside of this drawer face. I definitely don't want to see these curve cuts, so I'm gonna cover it with some maple veneer. To glue it on, I'm gonna use this contact adhesive, which really stinks. In the past, I haven't had the best luck using this method to veneer because it's kind of tricky to get things aligned, but this is fairly small, so I think it should go fairly smoothly. God damn, okay, I can smell it. That doesn't smell good at all. You wanna get a really even coat because if you have any lumps, you'll see it through the veneer. Now we let, bad idea. Now we let that sit for 15 minutes. Man, I hope this works. Okay. This always makes me nervous. Okay. Nice. That went on smoothly. Let's go.
After the inside veneer went on somewhat easily, I was able to cut off the excess with a sharp knife.
I'm surprised at how quickly I was able to get that veneer on. It looks really clean. Now the next thing that lies in front of me is actually assembling the drawer itself. But I was just thinking that it might be nice to have a slight round over on the inside edges of the drawer so that when you're reaching in the drawer for something, you're not gonna feel this sharp edge.
It's been a couple since I last heard ya. So I've been looking everywhere for ya. How would you feel when you needed someone to hold on to? They turn their back, ain't no turning back. I say I'm just here, you know I wanna find a perfect song.
Now the time has finally come to install the drawer slides. Both of these combined cost me $76. Now the thing that makes these special is that they're soft close. Now, I promise you it's these little tiny details that make interacting with a piece of furniture even more of a refined experience. Was it worth $76? We'll find that out once everything's said and done. I ended up doing some slight modifications with the Dremel because there were some oddly unnecessary pieces of metal that were getting in the way of things. I hope I didn't remove anything too important, but I'm pretty confident that this is gonna work out.
These drawer slides are incredibly nice, and they're gonna help me achieve my goal of a silent drawer that doesn't slam.
Yo!
I'll add a link below to them as well as any other tools and materials I used for this project. I glued up the drawer inside of the drawer box so that I could get it aligned in relation to the slides. I also needed to make sure that the drawer face was lined up with the box itself. After clamping it up and finishing this glue up with the classic finger wipe on the workbench, I went to bed, and the next morning it was time to see if everything was gonna work.
I have a bit of an issue here. It looks like the drawer face is wider than the actual cabinet. So this transition right here on either side is not flush. I thought I'd done enough planning to make sure that that wasn't going to be a problem. Hopefully that fixed it. Oh yeah, I don't have anything to worry about now.
Furniture builds like this one are a series of solving problems that you just created. And sometimes, those problems are just a result of pure clumsiness.
Oh, damn it. What the heck? Well, there's a bit of a crack here.
But the nice thing is, since you're the one who built it, you can usually fix it.
I think we fixed the crack. That was not good.
I veneered the outside of the drawer box to cover the dowels because, well, I really didn't like the look of them.
Redirect your energy. I know you had enemies.
At this point, I was about halfway done. I'd made the drawer and its box, and that was about it.
I am running out of time. I only have today and tomorrow before I go back to school. And I need to get this done, otherwise I'll have to come back home again.
With only 2 days to finish this entire project, I'd once again underestimated how long things would take. Although, with blind optimism, anything appears to be possible. So I got to work on the curved legs.
I know you have enemies, but you have a friend in me. Redirect.
Dude, that worked perfectly.
I know you have enemies, but you have a friend indeed. Redirect.
New wave, energy don't play with mine. Tomorrow's a new day.
Next one.
Pay no mind.
Next one.
Turn to a new page. Energy, you know the line. Onto a new wave. Onto a new.
After clamping both legs up and scraping off the excess glue, I turned my attention back towards the drawer.
Okay, I gotta install the drawer. I've never done this before.
I extended both drawer slides, marked the location for the holes, and fastened both of them together with the tiny screws that were provided. It took me probably a good 30 minutes of tweaking things to get the alignment right.
Moment of truth here.
But the time spent was well worth the satisfaction.
Dude. Cool. Very cool. I have a bit of a problem here. Those pieces on the drawer slides that I cut off, I didn't think I was gonna need them,
Oddly unnecessary pieces of metal.
but it turns out there were these tiny brackets at the back of the drawer slides, which I now realized are to hold the back of the drawer to the drawer slide.
Hope I didn't remove anything too important, but I'm pretty confident.
So right now the drawer is only attached on the front half and it's not secured in the back. Structurally, that's not great. So I came up with the solution, which is basically a bracket that's gonna screw to the back of the drawer and clamp it down to the drawer slides. Take a look at these bad boys. It's almost a shame that I'm gonna have to veneer the inside because some of these kerf joints are probably the tightest I've ever bent. Initially, I'd planned on having these legs be 90 degrees, straight up and down. But after looking at my sketches for a while and mulling it over, I realized that the straight up and down look is a little bit too monolithic. So I think the best way to lighten it up and make it feel a little bit more refined is to have these legs come in at a slight angle.
I cut a tiny slice off the bottom of each leg at a 5-degree angle on the bandsaw.
Cutting those angles on the bandsaw took quite a bit more trial and error than I captured on camera. I ended up ruining at least one bandsaw blade, but I think we got it pretty dialed right now.
As I started cutting the front profile of these legs with the track saw, it started to set in. There was no shot that I'd be able to finish this project before I had to return to college. And to make matters worse, the weather took a turn, causing my tent to leak, so I decided to cut my losses.
Ah man, everything's wet. Gotta go back to school tomorrow. Not to worry, coming back next weekend to finish this up. Good night. Well, I had to go back to college, did a week of school, and now it's the next weekend. I have 3 days to finish this entire project, and I have quite a bit to do still. I have to make the entire leg assembly. I have to figure out the electronics for the hidden feature, and I also have to figure out what the inside of the drawer is gonna look like. Oh, and I also have to sand and finish everything. So I have to work pretty efficiently and not get distracted here.
I quickly realized that no matter how much I sanded, the inside of the legs weren't going to look very professional.
So the problem I have with the legs now is that you can see the kerf cuts. That means we're gonna have to veneer it again. But luckily, I bought this massive roll of adhesive-backed maple veneer. And this means that all I have to do is peel off the backing layer, and there's a sticky side. No need for the terrible brain-destroying contact cement. Good lord. Don't be fooled by its size, it's tiny, but it's sharp. Yeah, dude. Holy moly. If I start in the center, that'll be good. Okay. We're on. I'm nervous I'm gonna mess this up. Gotta trust the process though. Oh shit. No. I don't want this side to stick. So if I put that there. Okay. Oh nope. Not yet. Don't stick yet. I think we are on here. That wasn't too bad, was it?
I got to work with my J-roller, making sure there was a good strong bond, and the time had finally come to make these boring legs look a bit more interesting.
The common thread that I landed on for the legs is to have these organic shaped cutouts. I think that serves a couple of purposes. The first of which is to make it look a little bit more interesting, and the second is to lighten up these heavy, sort of monolithic legs. Here's the deal. It is chilly out there. If I have my hands out of my pockets for more than 5 minutes, I really start to feel it. And it's definitely not safe to wear gloves working with power tools. I gotta keep trucking because I only have 2 days left to finish this entire project.
Although I'd made good progress in the first day of my 3-day weekend, the clock had started ticking once again.
Man, am am I glad that I did those cutouts. I really think they liven up the legs, and I think it's gonna be cool to be able to see the books.
With less than 24 hours before my train departed, it seemed impossible that I was going to finish this project.
It was 8:15 and severe weather in Portland, Oregon is causing dangerous conditions this morning still. Take a look at this tree that fell.
You know, we only bring in the big gun on the story when things are really looking terrible out there. The National Weather Service has us under an ice storm warning. That does not sound good. It is not good, and the interesting thing
Well, Mother Nature had given me a blessing and a curse. My train had been canceled and the college had shut down, affording me at least one more day of work. But I had yet to realize just how cold it actually was.
It's a little bit chilly today. That's not gonna stop us. We have work to do. Hands. My hands are out of my pockets for like 30 seconds. I start to feel it. Okay. 11 and a half by 13 and a half. God, dude. My hands are hurting.
I'm lucky I only had a few cuts that needed to be done outside because the ice started to build up on my table saw sled.
Come on. Oh, my hands.
I glued and hammered that piece into one of my legs and then glued the other leg on top of that. I used my digital angle gauge to check if it was level,
That's pretty damn good.
and I got to work screwing it in place. I'd used Baltic birch plywood for the legs, which, despite its similar color, wouldn't match the maple that I'd used everywhere else, so I had to cover the outside with more maple veneer. To conceal the plywood edges of the cutouts, I glued and taped on some more maple veneer. This was probably one of the most time-consuming parts, because I had to make sure there were no gaps. After using almost an entire roll of tape, the time had finally come to address the hidden feature of this nightstand.
The feature that's hopefully gonna help me fall asleep faster.
So remember in the beginning how I talked about not being able to easily turn my light off? Well, this will hopefully solve that problem and let me turn off my lamp when I'm half asleep.
Moment of truth, yeah? Oh, yes.
You probably already guessed it. It's a knob that will control my custom reading lamp that I made, which we'll get to in a bit. After carving out a little thumb divot into the knob, I drilled some holes in the drawer box that will accommodate the 12-volt input and output jacks I'll be adding. I also added a small groove for my pencil to rest in, so when I'm falling asleep I can easily write down any ideas that I have before bed. I woke up once again to a snow-covered landscape, and an email saying that school was canceled for another day and that the railroad tracks were still frozen over. I was in the home stretch for this project, and I was getting pretty stoked about it. I got to work wiring it up. I added two 12-volt barrel jacks to the underside of the drawer box. One is for the power input from the wall socket, and the other is for the cord that runs to the reading lamp. In between the two jacks, I wired my dimmer knob. This project was a lot of fun because I got to build a piece of furniture that I already use a lot, so it wasn't hard finding ways to improve it. From making it match the rest of my furniture, to improving the drawer and adding some hidden electronics. Even though I encountered some challenges along the way, I think the roadblocks force you to appreciate the fruits of your labor, and hopefully make for a story worth telling. The final touch was adding a leather drawer liner so it wouldn't make loud sounds when setting something in the drawer.